Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I finally have like a title for my thing. I hope you guys can read it. For me, it looks like a bunch of stuff is in the way, so I don't know if you can read the title that I have for my live today, but I'm excited to finally have something. I want to plug my microphone in so you can hear me clearer. For those of you who don't know, I put my live up on a podcast. So this is a live slash podcast. And it's time for me to treat it as such. You know what I mean? Get my schedule together, get my uploading schedule and all that together, and try and make sure that I'm consistent. So I talk a lot about masculine and feminine energy, and one of the things that I am trying to get together for myself is my personal masculine energy. I'm trying to get myself into a state where I am working like a machine, moving in a consistent basis. And, this is not me saying that I want to be like this all the time. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. People think that it's got to be all or nothing, that you got to be a machine or you have to be a human. And I'm here to encourage people to be both, be a cyborg, because that's what we all really are when it comes down to it. We're all both tool and both person. But having the balance between those two is what's key, and not fighting against both, not seeing one as the enemy and the other one as, the friend. And, like, it's not about opposition, it's about working together with your masculine and feminine energy. And so I want to work with the tool aspect of myself, the machine aspect of myself. And I encourage others to do the same. If you feel like you need to be more consistent, try to be more consistent. If you feel like you want to, try to be better about how you move through the world and be a more productive and useful person for yourself or for others, then move in that direction. But always keep at the center, at the core of who you are, that you're a human. Remember that. Don't ever forget that part, because that's what it's all for. You know what I mean? If you're not trying to be a human, then what in the world is your point of being on earth? The human part of you is the part of you that is of the earth. That's the natural part of you. So be human, be a machine, be a cyborg, be both. It's okay to do both. You can walk and chew gum. So that's what I'm here to encourage people to do. And if you're catching this live, that means you're supposed to be catching this live, so that you can be helped along on your journey towards cyborgness. Now, I don't know that I'm going to be on here very long today, because I have a phone call to make, and I'm always nervous. I know it's like you got one phone call to make, so you feel like you got to, cut your live short by a whole hour. Yes, actually, unfortunately, yes. Mainly because I feel like anytime I make a phone call to any kind of corporations or whatever, I'm always put on hold forever. It's always something. So I want to prepare my spirit and make sure that I don't give up before I even start. So, maybe that's part of the neurodivergent aspect of me, but like ultimately I know how time consuming little things can be, and I always anticipate things being more time consuming than probably what they actually are. And this has helped me to, or hurt me when it comes to time management. So I just want to be prepared for the shenanigans, because I got to call this company and we're going to see what they talk about. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, so there's that. So anywho, oftentimes when I get on this live slash podcast, I let the spirit move me towards what I'm going to be talking about. And, so sometimes the spirit takes form in people commenting and giving me a question, asking me something. Sometimes it just takes form in me talking. And I will think of something that I want to say, and then it'll lead me off on a tangent. And then y'all know how it goes. Those of you who are regulars here, the spirit will move me, and then we have a whole sermon on our hands. But one thing that I do think that I've been thinking about is how much we underestimate the spirit of loudness, or the spirit of talking, or the spirit of, you can call it a spirit, you can call it whatever, but like expression. Anytime we're expressing, we can be learning something new about ourselves. We can be learning something new about the world on the basis of how it responds to what we express. Like if you create art, people might see that art, and it might compel them to create art as well. And then it just echoes on and on and on. The messages that we send out into the universe are kind of like echo location. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like when you send out a sound, you see how far it travels and what it hits, and you don't know how far or how it affects people or things until, maybe you hear it back to yourself. Whatever the case is, oftentimes when you are expressing, you are learning more about your environment. And so I have been emphasizing for the past few years, as much as possible, I've been emphasizing to people, oh, meditate, go within, silence, be quiet, like listen to your thoughts, listen to whatever, you won't be able to hear if you're talking. And I have to say, I'm going back on that a little bit, because I think that I've overemphasized meditation and quietness and silence, and underemphasize the importance of expression. You know what I mean? And so I think that a lot of people have been suppressing their voice, so they don't even know what it sounds like. So I'm telling people to go within. It's so emphasized to go within, be quiet, silence. Monks, be like a monk. Walk and take a vow of silence, and that's the key. That's the only way. And sometimes it's screaming. Sometimes it's being loud. Sometimes it's the opposite. And we have to take that into consideration just as much as we're taking the other one into consideration, the silence, the suppression, because there's a lot of people who've been suppressed who could use some therapy that would involve them expressing and creating and being loud and taking up space, exploding outward as opposed to imploding inwards. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be an explosion, or an implosion. Sometimes it just is a, moving outward. It doesn't have to be kablooey. It doesn't have to be extreme, And so I've been thinking about that quite a bit lately, and how that has already played into my life personally, when I express, sometimes even without thinking, and this is not always the best thing to do, but like in some cases, I will hear how I really feel about something. You know what I mean? Like when I journal and just write and write and write, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm writing. I'm just going to write how I feel, every little thing about how I feel. I've written some of my best stuff that way. So a lot of times when we abandon this restraint that we have, that we've been told that we need to always have at all times, we can move closer to our feminine energy. And what I mean by feminine energy is your humanity. You can move closer to yourself. You can move closest to your highest self, or whatever you want to call it. I've been particular lately about language, and wondering, how much, or taking into consideration how much I use words that are hierarchical, like higher self, you know what I mean? But like inner self, perhaps outer self, I don't know. But, so if you ever hear me stop and stutter or think before I say something, it's because I'm examining the use of my words and how much I have incorporated hierarchical language into everything that I say. But regardless, when we are expressing, we are learning more about ourselves, and we're learning more about the world. And it makes so much sense that in this very, very masculine world that teaches all of us to be machines, that the feminine aspect of us, or the human aspect of us, is told that the only way to reach enlightenment is by being quiet, being smaller. Of course, we're going to be taught that. Of course, we're going to be socialized that that is an optimal version of feminism that we should all aspire towards. And I'm here to tell you that being a feminine human, being in your feminine energy, can be both quiet and it can be extremely loud and passionate and intense and expressive. And so you should never be ashamed of that aspect of yourselves. And if you felt that way before this live, I'm here to kind of confirm for you that you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to feel bad for being passionate or being expressive. That's okay. However, that is feminine energy. That is feminine. And that's part of the reason why I think a lot of men kind of pride themselves on being stoic. They see themselves as kind of being more mechanical. I'm logical. I'm stoic. I don't let things get to me. And then they see things getting to other people and they're like, yeah, I'm more superior because I don't let things get to me. I don't have those kinds of emotions, or I don't express those emotions. They might have the emotions, but their ability to suppress the expression of that emotion is something that they're proud of. And so that is how regular people, even women, are kind of socialized towards believing that being more machine-like, being more mechanical, being more stoic, as far as they're concerned, because I can get into stoicism. It is not what a lot of people think it is. There's a big confusion around that as well, but I won't go there for now. For now, I will say that this idea of stoicism, this misrepresentation of what it means to be stoic, makes people believe that they are more mature by suppressing their expression or not even acknowledging how they truly and really feel. And so the people who are acknowledging how they feel, the people who have high emotional intelligence and that they know when they need to cry, and they go off and they cry and they go off and, express themselves, and they're confident in that expression. These are the people that we tend to look at and think to ourselves, okay, that person doesn't have it together because, they cry at the drop of a hat. They're easily overwhelmed. Well, perhaps, yeah, maybe this person is easily overwhelmed, but perhaps this person has the language for how they feel. This person has a better grasp of how they truly feel. I recently did a video where I talked about my nephew, and I'm going to take a little time to tell his his story. He's like 5. Oh shoot! Is today his birthday? No, today's not his birthday. His birthday is like tomorrow, I think. So either way, I told a story about my nephew, my sister's son. So he's 5 years old. He's a baby as far as I'm concerned. And my sister recently went on a trip. She went on a cross-country trip. She has an older child who's like, much older than her little boy. And so she went on this cross-country trip with her older child and left her 5-year-old with his father. And so it was like a week-long drive, week-long trip. And while she was gone, he was with daddy as normal. He comes from a 2-parent household, so he's used to, being around daddy all the time, but just not used to mommy not being there, right? And so when my sister comes back, I asked her how her son reacted to her having been gone so long. Was he like super duper excited to see her and all of that? And my sister said that her son was just kind of regular. He didn't really react in a strong way. There was no tears of joy. There was no, nothing like that, right? He sees her, he gives her a hug like normal. He says, "Hi, mommy," and that's that. And so she says that this reaction from him was kind of surprising because she thought she would get a bigger reaction, but she was like, okay, he's good. And so She said that she could tell, however, that something was up because he was really, really sensitive about everything else. They had a hard time getting him dressed that morning. They had a hard time with breakfast. He's having a temper tantrum about breakfast. He's having a temper tantrum about random things that typically were just normal things for him, things that he had no problem with before, he's suddenly overwhelmed by. And my sister recognized that that was him expressing all of the big feelings that he'd felt about her having gone. So she was gone for that week. And, I don't know how he felt inside, but he had big feelings about it. And when she got back, he was just, he had big feelings and he didn't know how to express that. And so he kind of deviated those emotions, those big feelings, towards things that were not my sister. And it was when I heard that story, when she told me that story, we kind of looked at each other and laughed because we understood that, yeah, that sounds about right, especially for a boy, especially for, he's that young and he's already doing something that a lot of men do. A lot of people in general, to be honest, this is not just a man thing, but men are more socialized towards this because we emphasize emotional intelligence more for women. We don't emphasize it as much for men and boys. And this is unfortunate because humans need emotional intelligence. Humans need to be able to identify their emotions and understand when they're upset about something and how to use the words, use language. But some language is a way of letting you know how you feel. You know what I mean? So sometimes you don't have the words for something because you don't know the vocabulary for it. And so, of course, this 5-year-old is not going to understand that he feels like overwhelmed with all of these complicated emotions because his mother is back and he's happy to see her, but he was sad that she was gone and he was, devastated by, whatever, who knows, So these are words that he probably didn't have at that time. And so he's expressing his feelings in ways that are not direct to what he'd really like to express those feelings towards. So I say all of that to say, express yourself as much as possible in a safe way. Journal, create art, talk, scream. You know what I mean? Because you're going to express those feelings anyway. Just like how my nephew was expressing those feelings when it came time to put on his shoes and he's making that a big deal. You're going to get those feelings out. If you have feelings, they're going to find their way out and you're going to find a way to try and create logic around why it makes sense that you would be this upset because that car cut you off in traffic. Your logic is going to sound be sound to you, but it's not really going to be the most soundest logic. And this is part of the reason why the world is kind of the way that it is, and that people are, kind of causing havoc and chaos in all these various areas. It's because there's a lot of processing of emotions that has not been happening. People are not dealing with their problems head on. They do not have the words to say, I'm really disappointed that I had been abandoned. I felt abandoned by you in this moment. I'm so angry that I gave you all of this love and affection and I feel like you let me down, blah, blah. People don't have the words for that. People are too prideful to come right out and say that they feel sad or that they feel, and sad is such a big broad emotion too. Like if we were to really, really start to look at different words and what they mean as far as how they describe specific emotions, it's hard to kind of put your finger on that immediate, like it's hard to specifically put your finger sometimes on the exact emotion that you feel, but there's so many words that you can use to try and pinpoint exactly how you feel, and people don't have the range to be able to do that. They don't have the vocabulary to be able to do that. And Dawny Dawn, I'm seeing your comment. Thank you so much. Like I love that you saw that TikTok and that it touched you and that you've been contemplating it, because that's the reason why I created that TikTok. When my sister told me that about my nephew, it just felt like like my brain kind of just exploded, because I was like, wait a minute, that explains a lot. His frustration, it just made me so sad for my little baby. Like, he's not my baby, but he's my baby. And to know that he was going through it. Little man was going through it, but he didn't have the words to express how he felt, the overwhelm that he felt inside. And so he expressed it in different ways, non-productive ways for sure. And I mean, if that's what a kid is going to do, we as adults do this all the time and we don't recognize that's what we're doing. So when you go into work and somebody is, treating you this way or that way, it's because they perhaps have some emotions that they have not been able to process, and they're trying to process them in ways that are not productive and with people who have nothing to do with the source of those emotions. And I hate to say it, but I am big time guilty of this. You know what I mean? I don't say anything to anybody as if I'm above it all. Like, I kid you not, this is not something that I am guilt free of when it comes to not being able to identify, or not being able to address the source of my strong feelings. You know what I mean? I think that workplaces are especially rife with a lack of emotional intelligence, because people are often put in situations where they cannot, address their superiors. For example, if your boss is unfair to you, but you need this job, you're not going to be able to address your boss for fear that they may fire you, or that they may, punish you in some way or other. That's going to make your life and your job harder, or your job harder, therefore your life harder. And so you're not going to take your feelings out on your boss. You're not going to sit down and you and your boss go to therapy together. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to do whatever you have to do to keep that job, and then you're going to process those emotions in ways that might not be the most healthiest. So there's so much that people are dealing with on a regular basis. And when you see frustration from people over the littlest things, a lot of times that's them. I want to say, the word that's coming to me is siphoning, but that's not the word that I want to use. But misdirecting, I guess. Misdirecting their strong emotions, their complicated emotions, towards something that they feel safer to put that energy towards. And that's what we call logic. That's what we call logic. So people say, well, logically, this person needs to be in prison for the rest of their lives. And it's like, you're hungry. I talked about this on my TikTok, how there's a phenomenon. I still haven't looked it up. I forget what it's called, but there's a phenomenon where judges tend to give a harsher verdict when they have not eaten lunch. So when you think of how much our emotions are steering the ship for our logic, you understand that there is no true objective logic that does not, there's no true objective logic at the end of the day. Like at the end of the day, there is always going to be some kind of bias or other. And this does not mean that bias is not always bad. Sometimes bias is good in that you're going to need to kind of lean towards one side or other, because sometimes that's just what it is. It's kind of like, I'm doing this for the greater good, so you're biased towards the greater good. So it's not always a bad situation to be biased. Sometimes you're going to have some kind of bias to balance things out. And so, but understanding that logic is not without emotion. Logic is the expression of emotion. It is a justification of emotion. It's the representative of emotion. And anybody that knows anything about the framework that I talk about with masculine and feminine is that the masculine is the representation of the feminine. So, of course, logic is going to be the representation of emotions. You know, when you go to court, and I think the court example is probably the best one to use when it comes to this. But like when you're in court, the lawyer is making their statements, or they're making their argument and building their case. They are, they are going to tug at people's emotions. And the best lawyers are the ones that really know how to tell a story, that really, really know how to manipulate a person's emotions. Those are the best lawyers, because they know that at the end of the day, you're going to follow that emotion trail to their logic. And they say, well, logically, my client had to blah, blah, blah. Well, it makes sense that my client was put in a position where blah, 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 blah. From a logic standpoint, it was sound logic. So them creating that framework for why their client would naturally make the decisions that they made on the basis of the emotion, and this emotion is one that they're trying to conjure up in the in the courtroom. Yeah, they're creating a narrative. That's what logic is. You creating a narrative around an emotion. Logically, it makes sense that blah, 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 blah. So anytime somebody is explaining their logic and trying to convince you that there is no source to that logic, no emotional source to that logic, they're immediately lying to you. You can know automatically that this person is lying. That is a story within itself. Logic always is based in emotion. And if somebody is trying to convince you that their client has no emotions, what they're trying to convince you is that their client is a psychopath. Oh, they don't have no feelings. Their logic is just appears. You know what I mean? It makes no sense. But those are the arguments that people are having. Those are the conversations that people are having. I make my decisions based on logic. I don't make them based on emotions. What they really mean is that the emotions that they do have are what I feel like when people are saying that, what they mean is that they're not biased in any way. They have the greater good in mind. You know what I mean? I am coming from the perspective of kind of like this godlike perspective, where I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about others. It's just the truth. It's just the objective truth, and that's even the objective truth is always from some perspective. There's no such thing as an objective with no perspective, especially as a human being. So to consider oneself in a sense the God of logic with no source in emotions is like considering yourself a lawyer in a courtroom and you're not arguing for anyone. You don't have a client. Who are you arguing for? What are you arguing for if you don't have a client? You know what I mean? One thing that I think about quite a bit is, and it's funny that with this whole conversation with emotion being the source of logic and that kind of thing, I think often about Solomon, King Solomon. There's a story in the Bible about King Solomon these when he's like the wisest king. That's the point of the story with him. And two women come to him and they are arguing each other for custody of a baby. One woman's baby died and she tries to steal the other woman's baby. And so they both come in and they're like, oh, they're, this baby's mine. And apologies if I tell this story like weird. I always be retelling stories and everybody laughs at how I retell them. So forgive me if I leave out any important details, but I don't think I'm going to leave any important details out with this one. Either way, the women are arguing and it goes all the way up, makes its way all the way up to King Solomon. And both women are arguing that they are the mother of this child. They gave birth to this child. And so Solomon says, well, how about this? We're going to cut the baby in half. You take one half, you take the other half. And this one woman, one of the women is like, oh my God, no, please, no, she can have the baby. It was hers. Wow. Just remember that was her baby. I'm so sorry. Just let her have the baby. Please don't kill this baby. And the other woman is like, oh yeah, that's fine. Cut it in half. And at that moment, it was clear whose baby that really was. It was the woman who was willing to give that baby up as opposed to allow it to die in such a gruesome and horrific way. The woman who said, yeah, you can for sure cut it in half was not the mother, not in spirit and likely not physically, because her logic had no source in emotion. It had no basis in emotion. She was not moved by that. Okay, yeah, look, kill the baby. As far as she was concerned, she could take or leave the baby because hers was gone already anyway. So logic is emotional. The source is emotional. And King Solomon in that story is his wisdom was God-given wisdom. And that is one of the biggest stories that about how wise he was. Because he wasn't serious about cutting a baby in half. He just wanted to see who would be emotional about it. So when people say, oh, I don't have any emotion, what they're letting you know is that they should not even be part of the conversation. Why are you here? You don't have nothing to lose here? You have nothing to lose, then your opinion especially doesn't count. This is definitely not your baby. So when people make that case for why their logic is, I make decisions based purely on logic. I don't make decisions based on emotion. They're letting you know that they don't have a horse in this race. And that their opinion is especially not necessary in whatever it is they are talking about or arguing for or against. It's not whatever, blue, red, I don't care. Okay, if you don't care, if you have no emotions here, then you don't belong in this conversation. If it's either one to me, then why am I here? You get what I'm saying? So people will say things and they don't understand what they're really, really saying. However, also, people will say things like that in order to kind of make it seem as if their opinion is especially clean and pure and has no basis in any kind of bias. But if there's no bias, then what that means is that you're the judge. You're not the lawyer. You're not arguing the case. So there's a lot of confusion, I think, that people have when they think that their logic is just sound and objective and that it has no basis in emotions. And when people say things like that, you have to really, really listen to what they're really saying, And also kind of recognize for yourself your own frustration. That's why it's so important to feel your feelings. To go back to the original point that I was making when I talked about my nephew and his not understanding his big feelings. Sometimes we need to stop and like what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling? Am I sleepy? Am I hungry? The same way that we talk to toddlers, we need to talk to ourselves. I think people abandon understanding themselves when they get older because they're so used to being in their machine energy, their masculine energy, their tool energy. They're so used to it that they don't think to check in with the human part of themselves. Is my body hungry? Am I sleepy pies? I say sleepy pies. Am I sleepy pies? Do I need to take a nap? Am I still upset about that thing that happened the other day? Should I, contact that person, or is what's said? Is what's done? How do I relieve the feeling that I feel and not take it out on other situations, on other people? Yeah, you have to check in with yourself, because we get so caught up as in our machine, in our, like we're in our cog energy. We're going around, we're at work, chopping wood. Not really. I don't know if anybody chops wood at work, but what I mean is that, you're at work doing the thing that you do. It's so easy to go into an automated mode, and then before you know it, that emotion's going to come up. Emotions are kind of like gas. It's going to come up at the worst time. You can see it. It can come out like a fart. It can come out like an explosion. That gas is always at the surface. It's seeping out of your pores, always. So you better deal with that. You got to deal with that. I'm going to take some time to read these messages that I just saw. What would you say about those who may see themselves as the unbiased judge? I'm going to answer that. Let me look at Jacob's comment. It says people looking towards ChatGPT when all you need is a chat with an. Oh my God, Jacob. Ugh. You got me started. You about to get me started. All right, Dawn, let me address what you're saying. And then Jacob, I'm going to pin your comment actually, because I don't want to forget that you said that. And I want to talk about that for real. Okay. So, what I would say to the people who, may see themselves as the unbiased judge is that, I feel like that's one of those moments where you have to stop and ask yourself, okay, who appointed me judge? Who appointed me judge in this case? Because the unbiased judge is kind of like you're coming from the perspective of Solomon, where, okay, let's cut the baby in half. Talk about unbiased. He said he was going to solve the problem and completely, not just solve the problem, just completely destroy everything for everybody. Now there's no baby to complain about. Well, there is a baby, but it's not alive anymore. You know what I mean? And so when people put themselves in that position, they got to understand that kind of wisdom means that you're going to make a decision on the basis of someone's bias to know who to grant, the verdict to. And I don't know if I'm not a lawyer, guys, so I'm trying to use the correct language. So forgive me if there's any attorneys in the in the chat who are like, what is she talking about? But ultimately, you're going to have to use your logic to understand the emotional source of other people, and so if you don't even understand emotion or you don't respect it, then you are not in a position to be a judge. It's kind of like somebody coming from outer space to try and, decide what humans should do. You are so far removed from understanding what it means to be a human If you are strictly logical, if you're purely logical, you are so far removed from the human experience, then you would not be in a position to be able to understand someone else's emotions. So who made you judge? And so that's what I would say to that. Even if a person feels like I'm completely unbiased, this puts me in a position of judge. Not quite, because it's one thing to be unbiased, but it's another thing to understand emotion. You have to at least understand emotion. Empathy is required to be a judge to some degree. That's part of the reason why when attorneys make their arguments and make their cases and build their cases against or for, they are using emotions. So it's still, the logic still doesn't work when somebody's appointed themselves the judge. If you don't understand emotion, then you do not belong in any conversations. All right, so let's talk about what you said, Jacob, because I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately. I have been thinking about. Wait, hold on. Now I pinned the comment and I don't see it no more. Oh, ChatGPT. So, one thing that y'all will notice is that, again, when I talk about masculine energy, I'm always talking about it in the framework of masculine energy being tool energy. And a lot of times when I talk about that, people, immediately they get offended, they get scared. They're just like, oh, she's trying to get people to use men as tools. It's bad enough. The world is the way it is. People, blah, blah, blah. No, what I'm saying is that we're all being taught that we're supposed to be in our masculine energy. And this is serving not us, definitely not serving us. And so when the world is a more masculine place, it's a more mechanical place, and processes start to become automated. And automated processes are fine. I literally started off this entire live slash podcast exclaiming how I would like to have a more automated life in terms of putting my content out. I would like to be more in my masculine energy, my robot energy, my machine energy when it comes to creating content. However, one thing that I'm starting to see and that I think is really sad is how much people are trying to automate the human experience. Like, for example, checking in with oneself, knowing how one feels. So ChatGPT is turning normal human things into automated processes. It's making being human a more mechanical experience. It's already mechanical enough to be a human. Being a human already means that you have to provide value for shareholders. There's a lot of people who will listen to this live while they're at work, because they don't have to think while they're at work. They can listen to what I'm saying, and it penetrates deep while they're doing a job that a computer could do. That's how automated their work is. And so when you think about how much we're already machines, you get in your car, you can drive, many of us anyway. I know that when I was driving the same routes every day, I could do it with my eyes closed. I not really, but you okay what I'm saying? That's the expression. I'm always scared people are going to take me too literally, but there have been times where I have driven somewhere and I don't even remember to drive at all, because that's how much I'm in my machine energy. And again, this is not bad, but you don't want this for everything all the time. You don't want hanging out with your children to be, I don't remember it. I was in machine mode when I was doing that. Like doing things that are human, you don't want those to turn into automated experiences. And one of the things about being a human is experiencing the life that you're living, experiencing your body, checking in and not outsourcing your intuition. And I'm seeing people asking ChatGPT things that they should be asking themselves. I was so disappointed the other day because I was watching a a mutual of mine that who I love dearly, and one of their videos, they had said, well, I say I love them dearly, but I don't know them, but I just love their content dearly. I'll put it like that, because that was a weird thing to say. I'm like, I love them dearly. I don't know them. Y'all don't know me. You know what I mean? I could get off this live and be the worst person ever. So I take that back. But like, I was watching one of their videos, and in the video, they're one of those people that argues for a very, very specific point. Right. I root for them. Exactly. I root for them. Like I want good things for that person according to the goodness that they're putting out into the world. But they're one of those people that their videos are constantly about, I don't want to give them away, but like their videos are constantly about a certain opinion that they have. Kind of like how I have my masculine energy as a tool energy videos and feminine energy, source energy. They have their framework, and they are constantly talking about it. And they got on ChatGPT. They said, I asked ChatGPT if it agrees with me. And it did. And they didn't say it like directly like that, but they pretty much said, I asked ChatGPT this question and here was the answer. And the question that they asked was, does it believe pretty much what they believe? And ChatGPT said, yes, it did. And then they said, what would you say to people who blah, blah, blah? And ChatGPT speaks in the same cadence, in the same way that this person speaks, explaining all of the things that this person has already said in lots of their videos. It was making the same exact talking points as this person. It was using even the same idioms and expressions that this person used, the same jargon, everything. And I was thinking to myself, like, what difference does it make that you ask ChatGPT this? You say this anyway. You say this every day on your videos. You do lives where you talk about this. So that's like you saying, I asked my journal, what does it think of blah, blah, blah? What does it think of my outfit? My journal said, you look fly, girl. Like, what are we supposed to do with this information? You know what I mean? So to me, it feels like people are validating their own intuition with ChatGPT, and it's like you could just go to your intuition is valid. Your thought process, your logic, your beliefs, they're valid. It's kind of like, it reminds me of when people bypass their like, when there are some people who have eating disorders. Right, exactly. I asked my journal. There are some people who have sleeping disorders, or not eating disorders, and they will not know when they're hungry or not, because they've bypassed their own bodily function. They haven't checked in so long that they have no idea whether they're hungry or whether they're full. So they'll keep eating, or they won't eat, and no triggers goes off because their body is like, you don't listen to me anyway. What difference does it make? You don't listen to me. I told you that you're already full. I told you that. I sent all the signals. I did the thing. It's like the ignition is broke on this. I don't know. I can't tell you anything because you don't listen to me. And that's our bodies. There's so many of us who have that issue. Just keep eating because there's food on the plate. Just keep doing this or that because that's just what I do. Not because your body wants to do it. You've abandoned your body a long time ago. There are people who are living like that. And so when I see people asking ChatGPT things that they should be asking their bodies, or should be asking themselves, like they got to fill ChatGPT. So the other day, I was walking down the street. Okay, well, first of all, my neighbor Tom, it's like, you already know all of this stuff. Write it down in your journal. Read it back to yourself. Say it out loud. Maybe when you hear it, you're going to hear how it really sounds. I mean, make a friend. Talk to them. I find that when I journal, and this goes back to the beginning of what I talked about with this podcast, I find that when I journal, I often will revisit something that I'd written down forever ago, and it'll hit me, it'll strike me that, oh, this is what was going on. This is what was happening. I'll ask a question in my journal from last week, and that question will have been answered 100 times over by the time I revisit that question that I asked in the first place. And I'll revisit the question and I'll think, oh my God, I asked this and the universe was delivering on answers. Delivering. Even the way that I've asked the question will answer the question for me sometimes. So we're asking ChatGPT to do things that our intuition was built for. Our intuition is like, hey, I know this. I got the answer for you. You can't give ChatGPT all the context. You're only going to be able to give it enough for it to agree with you. It's never going to not agree with you. Girl, you was right. And sometimes we need that. This is true. But learn to agree with yourself. You know what I mean? Learn that. Learn your biases. That's another thing about journaling that I love. And art too. Art, journaling, any kind of expression. Again, we as the feminine aspects of us is taught to suppress ourselves, not to express ourselves. So when you're expressing, you're learning more about yourself. You're learning about your biases. I have a lot of orange in my artwork. I didn't realize that until I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, well, yeah, there's a lot of orange there. I wonder if that's, what that's about. What's that mean? What's that color mean to me? When I write in my journal, I realize that a lot of the things that I write are things that make me sad or the one bad thing about the day. It took me going back and reading all of that to kind of understand, okay, I got a little pessimistic slant here. What's going on with that? Let me see if I can, start to incorporate more gratitude into my journal. Let me see if I can start to remember the good thing that happened today. So track yourselves, check in with yourself. Another thing about ChatGPT that I had been thinking about quite a bit is that people are starting to rely on it again for normal human things that they should be, doing for themselves, checking in with themselves, that kind of thing. And they're going to rely on it to the point where now they can't do it on their own. So you need ChatGPT to help you write an email. You need ChatGPT to come up with this schedule and another schedule and another. You better get everything you want out of ChatGPT because they're going to start charging. They're going to start charging. Get them tools and be ready to wrap it up. Because when they feel like you are reliant on them to the point where you cannot not have them, kind of like how Netflix did, how all these streaming channels did, you are, or not streaming, is it? Yeah, I guess streaming. You're going to have to start paying a fee if you want to live your life normally. You're not going to be able to understand how to go about life without using ChatGPT. And so once they get to that point, yeah, they're going to start charging. And they're going to be able to charge whatever they want. So how much you put into this machine is how much they are going to start charging when they find out that you can't live without it. So, if you're getting your validation from ChatGPT, you better get it enough to last you for the rest of your life because it's not going to be free forever. And I think about that constantly. I think about people say, now I have a friend. It's like, oh no, it's just, oh man, it's sad. But that's the business model. That's how that works. And so when I see people outsourcing their intuition to a machine. I'm just like, oh, now you're about to start paying for intuition. Like, you are not exercising that muscle in yourself. You are outsourcing a responsibility to something that may or may not have the tools to really, really help you, or may not be sustained. It's not even may not. It's not sustainable. It's just not. Learn how to find within what you need. When you think about it, this is how people are with relationships. Those people who will look for a relationship before they will fix themselves. They will get their validation from someone else. I asked my husband and he said, you know, my girlfriend likes the way okay, do you like it though? Do you? How do you feel about it? You're using a tool to do something you can and should be doing yourself. Remember what I said about tools. Masculine energy, that's the tools. You are masculine just as much as you're feminine. You're both. We're all both. We all contain both. So it's about finding that balance. But if you're outsourcing something that you can do yourself, you may get to a point where you don't even realize that you have that tool within yourself as well. It's like the famous black mom saying, we got McDonald's at home. We got McDonald's at home. If you can't live without McDonald's, you got a problem. And so there's a lot of people who don't realize it, but they're putting themselves in an addictive situation with something that is unbiased. It has no emotions. Its logic has no basis in emotions. ChatGPT does not care about you. It is programmed to seem like it cares about you. It's programmed to sound like it has a basis in emotion, it emotionally cares about you. But ChatGPT does not care about you. So it's something that I think about quite a bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with using ChatGPT. Do not get me wrong about that. Something to youth with, I'm sorry, here we go. It says stunting the youth with can and will basically break them down before they can even build up. Exactly. We have to give them the tools to check in with themselves. We have to give them the tools. We can't have them being like, let me ask ChatGPT if it's okay to keep this secret with that grown up. Like you have to, you're not always going to be able to check in with the computer and see what it thinks. Sometimes you're going to have to, and again, it is a helpful, ChatGPT is helpful. I don't want to sound like I'm completely anti ChatGPT or completely anti AI. I'm not. I think AI is amazing. It's an awesome tool, but I've been saying all along that the machines have taken over, and I know that it confuses people when I talk about this, because when I talk about masculinity, it puts it puts men on the defensive, and it puts people into a mindset where they think that they have to be anti-men or anti-masculine anything. But all of the ways that men have been ruling the world is all of the ways that machines have essentially taken over. And so when you look at the origins of how it starts with little things. It starts with, oh, well, this machine can do that. Oh, this machine can do that for you. Well, this machine can do that for you. Well, you don't have to do it. The machine can do it. And then after a while, you cannot live without this machine doing this thing for you. And any situation that, there are so many women who are in situations where their husbands do everything and now they don't know anything. They don't have a bank account. They don't know how to run their bank account. They don't, so it turns into financial abuse. So that's the thing that scares me, is that it's the same pattern being repeated over and over and over again when it comes to feminine beings, not just women, feminine beings in general. When the machines take over, it doesn't always start with force. Not always. Sometimes it's force. Sometimes it's outsourcing your intuition, outsourcing your autonomy. That's why I don't care when someone calls me masculine for keeping my independence. I'm able-bodied. I will. Yeah, you know how to do it. You know how to make it at home. You're not going to be one of the, people lined up outside the McDonald's. I need a burger. I can't not have it. Please, just one McDouble. You know how to make it at home. Who benefits from that dynamic? Is it greed or evil or both? I think it's a lot. I think it's not just greed. It's not just evil. I think it's stupidity too. Um, I'm sorry. I'm every time you guys write, I get distracted. So then I look at it. It says, "Ooh, that made me think about the Matrix, where life was completely outsourced." Yeah. Yep. Now with the Matrix is such a perfect example of everything that I'm talking about here. In my workshop, which I will plug, um, I talk in a lot of detail about the movie The Matrix, and I talk about the Terminator and how they're linked. And I also talk about the Brave Little Toaster. I don't know if you guys remember that. The movie The Brave Little Toaster. I call it the Brave Little Toaster to the Terminator pipeline. And that is the reality that we're living in right now. And so um I'm sorry. See, I get distracted when you guys. Okay, let me focus. Let me focus. But if you're interested in signing up for my workshop, I will be offering it very, very soon. I wanted to do it this coming weekend. I still might, but if you're interested in the taking the workshop, go to my website. It says the Brave Little Toaster is going viral right now. It is? Huh. Interesting. There needs to be a realistic balance with technology. Too far either way is an issue. Yeah, yeah. It's everything is about balance. Everything is about balance. Every single time I get on this live, every time I do my podcast, every single time, it always comes back to that one thing: balance. Masculinity is not bad, but you need balance. You need to balance it with the feminine. People don't know what masculine energy it is. It's tool energy. It's the Brave Little Toaster energy. It's ATM energy. We love ATM. We love a good ATM, don't we? It's money energy. I love money. I love it. I love being able to use that tool. Money's a tool. Love using that tool. That's a great tool. You know, it's hammer energy. I love hammers. It's a lawyer energy. It's role playing energy. It's storytelling energy. But we need to balance it with reality, and that is the feminine. The feminine is reality. The feminine is the human part. You know, right? Exactly. Masculinity is scheduled routine. Get the job done. And people. That's one of the things that drives me crazy is when people underestimate that energy. When they say, yeah, when a lot of times women will, they'll kind of believe that when I'm talking about it, that it's like from an empowering way of like, yeah, F the patriarchy. Yes, F the patriarchy for sure. However, we're not throwing out masculinity completely. Masculine is amazing. Masculine energy is amazing. You want to be consistent. You want to be strong. You want to keep going. That machine energy, love it. I don't want to live in a world without it. I don't. The rest of y'all, oh, I just want to live in a feminine world. You have fun. I'm gonna be over here. You know what I'm saying? Where the machines are. However, gotta have that balance. Gotta have that balance. I think it was at the end of the Matrix where they're like, we just gotta work together. I think that there was like an agreement or something. The last few Matrix movies sucked. I think we can all agree about that. But at the end, I'm pretty sure it was just like them kind of like, yep, we got to work together. It was not, let's completely eliminate. There's no such thing as, we don't even want a calculator left. we don't want no machines. No, it was, we got to work together. We got to balance this thing on out. We did too much. The machines, we were doing too much. Ultimately, that's what it came down to. Exactly. Masculinity is the container and femininity is the flow within it. You better talk that ish. That's what I'm talking about. I love it when people are speaking the language and they know the language. That's exactly it. It's the container. And when money is equal to human life, it's money as a tool for self-destruction. Exactly. And that's where we are right now. The machines have taken over. Money's taken over. Money's a machine. Money's a tool. It's taken over. People are doing anything for money. One of the things that cracks me up when I hear it, and we have, like grown adult human beings are saying this, or cyborgs, I guess. We don't have enough money to save the planet. It would cost this much money to save the planet. First of all, the hubris, you know what I mean? First of all, to imagine that you're going to save the planet with money. Oh, no. It's not the planet that's in danger. The planet's going to be here. The planet's been here. The planet's going to be fine. So it just, the elevation of money to the pedestal that it has been put on is crazy. It's crazy, and it's crazy making. We could, as a collective, decide to not value money. That would be funny. As if money isn't made out of planet. Exactly. Hello. Hello. Come on. Just the logic ain't there. Speaking of everyone devaluing money, I think, or what you said, decide to not value money. Yeah, devaluing money. I think that is not quite as feasible as if, well, I guess my brain went to all or nothing thinking, and forgive me for that. Like, I guess what I was thinking was if you meant like if we completely decided that money is worthless. But yeah, decentering money. If we decentered money, if we devalued money, I think that we're kind of moving towards that because we have no choice. People aren't able to afford what they need anymore, at least in the United States, so it's kind of like $100 now is not what it used to be. So money is devaluing itself at this point. And people are finding ways to get things. I've been seeing all kinds of bartering websites starting to appear. And the way that I'm able to get by when it comes to a number of things are in ways that have been surprisingly bartery. You know what I mean? I've been doing a lot of trading, a lot of, helping in this way and that way. I've been coming across money in ways that have been different than how I usually make money. And I think that more people are going to find themselves in that position. I think that's happening. But it's because all of the things that those who worship money are doing are counterintuitive. It's very short-sighted. You can't raise the prices of things and think that people aren't going to start deciding to, I guess I don't need it that bad. This is a very consumerist country. America is like, I think the majority of the consumers on earth are American. We don't make a lot of things, but we sure as heck buy a lot of things. And so the world counts on our spending ability. And if we're not working and if we're not being paid well, there goes that spending ability. What are we going to do? We're going to start being, what's the word where you are, I feel like it starts with I. Ingenuitive, ingenuity. We're going to use ingenuity. We're going to get creative. All right, I'm going to read some of you guys' comments. It says, and the billionaires would lose it if the money stopped flowing. Exactly. This lady was shocked when she couldn't sell me sunglasses. I told her it's not in the budget. People need to rise up already. We as a people have already waited long enough. Yeah. But, I think that the idea of rising up isn't quite what a lot of us think it is, because many of us, we feel like we got to do something big, and sometimes it's just not buying those sunglasses. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just not buying the sunglasses, not going to Target. That's a big one. Target really messed up with what they did, and they are feeling it, and it's just a little bit. It's a little pinch, but it's enough for people to start to feel empowered by not spending money. You know, I love it. I love it. I see it a little. I see it what's ahead, and there's nothing that the powers that be can do to stop what is coming, because people are starting to get tired of being machines. You know, people are tired. People are tired of the subscription services. You know what my mom went out and did? She went out and bought a ton of DVDs, and she's still buying them. And guess what? She just found out there's a whole market of people who just sell DVDs from off of streaming stuff. So people are finding ways to get around all of these paywalls. And it's beautiful. I love it. I love watching. I love that people are thrifting more. I love it. It says there needs to be a goal. What happens when we rise? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I just know that things will change, and it will have to be like everything that those who are at the top of this system can count on is that those who are on the bottom levels are going to continue to do the work. So if we change the game plan, if we change everything, and we really, really decide to start trading and thrifting and only using what we need, and creating, making McDonald's at home. We got McDonald's at home. If people started to operate in that mindset, they would have no choice but to try and find ways to feed off of us in that, you know what I mean? In that. But how do they get into the ecosystem? I guess that's the question that we would be asking ourselves. How would they get into the ecosystem? Because what I'm talking about is that people are going to be forced to kind of create an ecosystem. One of the shows that I used to love was Walking Dead, where, the whole show is like them traveling around, and they're fighting each other, and there were a lot of really dangerous people. After a while, it wasn't the zombies that were the biggest problem with the movie or the show. It was the living people fighting each other. And I think that we've gotten so used to seeing that aspect of humanity, like, oh, if things were to completely fall apart, people would just all be fighting each other. People would be working together as well. There'd be a lot of people working together. There'd be a lot of learning happening. a lot of people trying this and growing that. There'd be a lot of time that people would have on their hands that they don't have right now to be able to figure things out. And ecosystems would be very important. People working together would be very important. And so we can think of all of the ways that people would like not work together, but like we have to understand that I believe the nature of human beings is kindness and resourcefulness. That is our nature. That's just as much a part of our nature as survival and all of that, and violence and whatever. So recognizing that aspect of ourselves and cultivating it early before things get to a point where, they devolve into craziness, I think is key. But it's not glamorous. Nobody wants to hear that part. Everybody's like, no, but we got to make sure that we know how to, combat and fight and blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, that's important as well. But we also need to know how to clean water, how to what is it? How to purify water. You better learn how to do that too, because you're more likely to die from contaminated water than you are from, being in a battle dome or something, I don't know about a lot of people, laugh out loud, many not going to make it too rigid in their masculine energy. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are very rigid in that masculinity. There was a study done through that, though, that proved that humans will always create a hierarchy. Um, yeah, that study was done right now while people are in their robot mode, while people are in masculine mode. Yeah, people now in masculine mode would do that. People socialized towards masculinity would create a hierarchy. But there are plenty of cultures where it's an ecosystem where you don't have a whole bunch of people serving a boy king, but of course those aren't going to make history. Those aren't going to be the stories that are told, because that's a more indigenous way of being. We live in white supremacy land. We live in masculine land, you know? So, of course, the studies that they do are going to be filtered through the lens of masculine energy, masculine people. I would imagine that it was white people that performed that experiment where they came to the conclusion, yep, that's what we do, you know? Yeah, that is what y'all do. That is what they do. So recognizing that move towards masculine energy is us elevating the tool, us elevating the systems as opposed to the people. Recognizing that means that you're going to automatically try and work to make sure that there's balance. As soon as you see those hierarchies starting to form, you got to shut that down. Wait a minute. Is this serving everyone? Is this sustainable? Is this going to, why do we have a king right now? We got stuff, we got things to plant, we got things to do. Why are we all serving? We're all going to bring this person apples. Why? Are they handicapped? They can't do it themselves? What can we, okay, so they're handicapped. What can they do? They might be handicapped in this area. They may not be handicapped in that area. What can they do? So understanding that everybody has a place. Everybody got a job. No job is above another job. You do this, I do this. We got to work together. So there's definitely the lens that we see everything through is one right now that can be biased, and that bias is always towards masculine energy or masculinity because we live in a very masculine land. But if we lived in a place where there was balance, we could understand how to when to elevate one and when to elevate others, because sometimes you are going to need to elevate one above the other, but it depends on the time. It's everything within context. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're going to need to be in your masculine energy. You're going to have to shut those emotions off and go into robot mode. That doesn't mean that emotions aren't going to be at the source of it, but they're just not going to, they're going to have to be decentered. Sometimes you're going to have to center the emotion. We're gonna have to deal with this emotion. Okay, let's talk about it for real. Like sometimes you're gonna have to really, really be your authentic and real human self. And sometimes you're gonna not be productive. And that's okay, because productivity is not everything. Yep. Question: is the attachment to consumerism masculine or feminine energy? Both or varies? I think I would agree with what Ronnie's Kitchen says, that the attachment is feminine, and that the structure itself is masculine. I agree with you on that, Ronnie. I think that's what it is. And I think okay, so one kind of formula that I like to use when it comes to this kind of stuff is when I think about the user and the product. The product is masculine, the user of the product is feminine, because the product itself is the tool, right? The tool is the product. Masculine energy is tool energy. If you're using the tool, then you are the feminine in that situation. Kind of like if you have an attorney, your attorney who is representing you is masculine. You, the client, are feminine. In some instances, that attorney is going to have more, they're going to know their way around the courtroom, and that's the power that they have in that situation. But you ultimately are the one that hired them. And so if you are the user of that tool, you could be addicted to it. You can become addicted. It's kind of like how teenagers, if you get around a teenager, they like this all the time. Look at their backs be like this, just hunched over, just looking at their computer all day long. My mom was the first one that gave me the language for it. And she was like, oh yeah, the kids are cyborgs. She said, they're cyborgs. They're not just humans. They're machines. She said, look at how, she said, I notice anytime my grandkids come to visit, they have to be near a outlet. I said, oh my God, they are cyborgs. Because I started noticing when my nieces would visit me, they would sit wherever there was the closest outlet. That's where they would sit. So you become addicted. The user is feminine. Source energy is feminine. Masculine energy is the structure. It is the product. It is the tool. It is whatever is being used. And so, the attachment to consumerism is, that's a user. That's feminine energy. The user being addicted to the tool. And this is not to say that men don't this is not about men and women. Like I said, everybody contains both energies. But like one way that you can see this is, stereotypically speaking, there are so many women who are addicted to men that are bad for them. But I love him. He hits you. He hits you. He abuses you. He don't love you. He doesn't care about you. He'll be with you. He'll be with anything. He'll be with anyone. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, if it's got a hole, he's going to be with it. You happen to have a hole. But I love him. User, tool. So when you understand this framework, you understand that any system that's a tool that's elevated to a degree that it should not be elevated to. If it's a tool, that's masculine energy. Whatever and whoever is attached is the feminine energy. This thing would not have power without the feminine energy. If your phone is the tool that you're attached to and that you're addicted to, it can't turn on without you. You turn it on. You're addicted to it, but you are the one who has the on and off switch. That's the feminine. Feminine has the on and off switch. Feminine has all the power. All the power. And it outsources that power. It's source energy. Feminine energy is source energy. And it gives its source energy to anything that it wants. So that masculine is a tool. Source energy gives it power. You have the hammer. Every time I do these lives, I should have a hammer near me, because that hammer isn't going to float up and hammer things all by itself. You as the woman, you as the user, picks the hammer up and you give it the power to do what it does. So consumerism is powered by consumers. The consumer is the feminine. The structure for consumerism is the masculine. It's the tool. So I'm sure that answered your question. I was gonna say, I hope it answered you. I know it answered your question. I know you got the question answered a long time ago, but you guys gave me a chance to rant. All right, I don't know what time it is. Oh, it's 5 minutes past my time that I was supposed to be getting off of here. But I am so happy that you guys all joined me and let me go on my little rant. And I hope that the message today was empowering to anybody who needed to hear it. I hope that you guys recognize how much It is so cool to be a cyborg. You don't have to be all human. You don't have to be all machine. You're both. And you got McDonald's at home. You know, you don't have to go out and get it. You got it at home. Every morning, 8 and 10 a.m., you can find me on here giving my little speech talking about masculine and feminine energy and all of the things. All right. So bye for now and have a wonderful and productive day. Or not productive day. You don't have to be productive to be worthy. Bye.